Here in Monton lived Charles Carr Ashley. In the sun, sheltered from inclement winds by walls draped in bougainvillea, Charles Ashley's thoughts were focused, it seems, on the grey, unsheltered shores of his own country. For in 1905, he made a will, leaving his money for the saving of life at sea. In the cities, tragedy has become an overworked word. A tragedy at sea is remote, too far from home to be fully realized. And so it is often ignored. It is not of immediate interest. But there is a small parcel of found people almost entirely of the sea. Figuratively speaking, it lies doors. These people are concerned with the saving of life at sea. Their work, which started in 1884, 14 years before this darling's act of heroism, has never stopped. Primarily, their task, the perfect vessel, to position is needed and to man it with... Designing a lifeboat is difficult. Each is better than its predecessor, but the perfect vessel has yet to be built. Positioning a lifeboat is relatively easy, although costly. But the men who man the lifeboat, even when given nothing less than the best in terms of shipbuilding, need something more, something that the institution cannot provide. It is fortitude. Without that, the effort of the institution, the work of the shipbuilders, and Charles Ashley's money or anyone else's would be as nothing. Fortitude is a human element, not determined by size or class or creed or color. And these coxswains, indeed all coxswains, and each member of every crew, possess it in abundance. At Land's End, almost 70 years after Charles Ashley made his will, the bequest continues to fulfill his intention. On this harsh and hazardous peninsula stands the most southwesterly village in England, Sennen. Here, manned by the villagers, is stationed the only remaining lifeboat of the 6 that Charles Ashley gave to the institution. It is named after his mother. For the people of Sennen, the day starts with concern for the weather. These people are alive to the weather at all times. At first light, their eyes turn to the sky. Wind and sea are a part of their daily life, as familiar as bread on the table. The children grow up with it. It dominates their lives, as their work at school shows. Until recently, Sennen was a divided village. The village proper is beside the church. Those who lived here on top of the hill were called overhillers. They were the despised landsmen. Beneath this steep escarpment is the Cove, where in winter the sun never touches the roofs of the houses. Here were the seamen, the covers, as they called themselves. All that they had in common with the overhillers was language, and this they employed mainly for abuse, for the overhillers were looked upon as foreigners. Even the inns were divided. Seamen used the Old Success, and landsmen used the First and Last. The only neutral ground was the church, the chapel, and the school. The feuding and fighting is over now, partly due to the decline of fishing. For each year, fewer covers go fishing. Fewer boats are painted and more are offered for sale. Daily, their catch, which is sold each morning on the beach, has dwindled. But the ending of the feud was due mainly to the personal qualities of one man. It was Henry Nicholas who changed the unwritten rule that service in the lifeboat was the prerogative of fishermen. Those best qualified as men, he decided, shall serve as crew. And when fishermen and farmers served together, it came about that Charles Ashley's bequest did more than provide the means of saving life at sea. It served also to unify an entire community. The lifeboat has become a feature of everyone's daily life, even that of the children.
The theme of this term's work is the lifeboat.
Mathematics is the study of patterns. This is the universal set of Susan Ashley. That means that only the crew can be combined in this set. Their names are Morris Hutchings, Ken Bowden, Richard George, Cyril Bottrell, Hedley Hutchings, William Pender, Eric Pengilly.
Eric Pengilly is coxswain of the Sennan Lifeboat.
The work is never the same, but when I look up the records of the Sennan Cove branch, I see that almost 100 years ago they were doing the same sort of thing as we're doing today. Certainly the names of the crew have not changed much. Henry Nicholas was coxswain before me. He gained his first award when he was 17 and spent his entire life as a member of the lifeboat crew.
I left school at 14 and I went fishing, seeing that my family was all connected with the lifeboat. My grandfather was coxswain, my great-grandfather was coxswain, my uncle was coxswain. I naturally wanted to be there too. Well, the coxswain was calling for volunteers. So I said, I'll go, Tommy. He said, put up a jacket, boy. I put up a jacket, and that was 1919 on the longships. And there was a gale of southwest wind, and we had to beat out and pick some of the men up in the water. Well, one fella turned quick-a-mold in the water, and he disappeared. The other man, he looks to me, he was praying. And we threw the line over the rock, and he tightened around his waist and around his hands, and he wouldn't jump then. So we had to pull him off.
We still have a Pender, Bill Pender.
I'm a carpenter. And my father and my uncles, my grandfather was all fishermen. I got a boy at 16, and he's in the building trade. I hope that he'll come along and be a crew member like myself.
The third of the traditional Sennan names is Dick George, a lifeboat mechanic.
I'm a fisherman. This is where I get my livelihood. My father and my grandfather were fishermen before me. That cottage up there, the ruins you can see, was where I was reared with my granny and my uncle. The lane is called after my granny, Mariah's Lane. There is the lifeboat house. There is the Coast Guard rough weather watch station, where we get our calls from. Beyond it is the Longships Lighthouse. Inside is the Land's End Point, the graveyard of shipwrecks.
But we have new blood now. Our shopkeeper, Kenneth Bowden, is in the crew. He came from the Midlands, Birmingham, I believe.
Oh, no, it wasn't Birmingham. It was Wolverhampton. I was born in the Midlands, and as far as I know, I haven't any seafaring ancestors. We came down here and exchanged businesses with friends. Rather an unusual thing to do. Our friends couldn't settle down here somehow. Can I help you, my dear?
3 points, please.
We settled down quite happily. Any good today, Dick?
Very scarce. Labour in vain, men driven off by pressure wind.
You know, to have landsmen working with fishermen in the lifeboat service needed a big decision. A big man was needed to make such a decision, and only Henry Nicholas could have done it.
When I took on coxswain, there was a shortage of fishermen in the place, and I knew there was a lot of able-bodied men around the district that would be good men for the lifeboat. And that's the reason why I took Cyril Bottrell.
I'm a farmer, and I've been farming here for 12 years. And one day, collecting seaweed from the Sennan Cove beach adjoining the station, Mr. Henry Nicholas came to me and asked me would I go on the lifeboat if necessary. From then on, I've been a crew member for almost 10 years. 25 years ago, they would have laughed at the farmer being the member of a lifeboat crew, but now there's two of us.
I'm the other farmer.
This is Headley Hutchings. For generations, the Hutchings family have farmed this land beneath the beacon hill of Chapelcarn Brae, where their predecessors lit bonfires when the enemy was sighted at sea. Headley Hutchings joined the lifeboat crew at the same time as the second coxswain, his namesake, Maurice Hutchings.
Yes, I joined about the same time as Headley. It was about 10 years ago, I suppose. But one of the things I remember most was the rescue from the Victor Roger. Henry was coxswain then, and he took her in right alongside, and we picked off 4 men. Then we had to come out because she was bumping on the bottom. And we went back a second time and picked off the 5th man. The big sea struck us astern that time. The newspapers made a lot of fuss about it at the time, but then it was forgotten. Everywhere but here on the coast, people have long memories down here. They have plenty to remind them of it.
The shoreline tells its own tale of yesterday's weather, as the morning sky foretells today's.
Shipping forecast for the next 24 hours. Viking, 40s, Cromarty. Southeasterly 6.
The weather's looking very bad. Looking very grim, boy. Enough to make us pale.
I think we should have some more rain.
I think the weather's easing away a bit, Leonard. There isn't so much ground sea as what it was. Maybe you're right, but I haven't much faith in it.
Lundy, Fastnet. Westerly 4 or 5 and increasing 5 or 6. Occasional showers, mainly good.
He is dropping in the bothers, but I didn't think when he go around north so quick as this, he won't last.
I agree with you, sir. I think if the wind will back up north a bit too quick, we're going to have more rain.
If he go around north slowly and come around northeast, that's the weather the farmer wants.
The weather that'll feed a farmer will starve a fisherman.
Everyone is concerned with the weather, but not least Captain Harvey, the honorary secretary of the lifeboat.
Of course, when there's unsettled weather, one naturally listens into the weather forecasts, and if gales force 8 or force 9 are forecast, then one must be prepared to expect a service call. In some cases, the first intimation of distress comes from a lighthouse keeper. In other cases, from the Coast Guard on duty watch. At other times, from the keeper of a light vessel, as in the case of the Seven Stones light vessel and the tanker Tory Canyon. After some considerable experience, I've come to the conclusion that we might get calls at any time. When you least expect them, you often get them.
The lifeboat is at all times Captain Harvey's responsibility. Being shorebound, his decisions are based on radio messages from the coxswain in command at sea and observations from the land made by the Assistant Secretary, Mr. Hicks.
I'm the Assistant Secretary of the Sennen Cove Lifeboat. My job is to go by land to the nearest point where the vessel is in distress and report back to Captain Harvey. This is one of the most frustrating jobs there is, reporting and helpless.
Down there, at 5 o'clock one morning, a French trawler, the Jean Gouget, went hard aground in a southwesterly gale. The lifeboat was standing off and couldn't get any closer, and the cliffs were unclimbable. And then we had to call the LSA and Coast Guard to try and get a line ashore. And they couldn't take hold of the line. There was one chap in the wheelhouse, and he couldn't catch hold of it. The seas were so rough, he just couldn't possibly hold it. And eventually, within a minute or two, he was washed out and went through into Damper Bay. It was so futile to see these chaps trying to get off, and we were powerless to do anything. Watching the bodies washed out, a sight I shall never forget.
But Sennan life goes on, and holiday makers are an essential part of it. Summer weather with an offshore wind gives a deceptive air of calm. But an offshore wind here means an onshore wind on the other side of the point. There's a storm blowing up. A storm that soon will play with ships like a giant with pygmies, testing men and vessels to the point of destruction. In this test, some fail and call for help. The call is answered. It is answered by these men, Sennan men, who leave homes, wives, and children for the sake of anonymous people in peril. And aware of the sea as they are, they know deep down that they also could fail and in their turn lose their lives. That men can still act like this deserves some thought. Can this generosity of spirit be matched by us in practical terms? Consider this, for from the dangers of shipwreck, let no man think that he is safe. Of a lifeboat, Sir Winston Churchill once said, "It drives on with a mercy which does not quail in the presence of death. It drives on as a proof, a symbol, a testimony that man is created in the image of God and that valor and virtue have not perished in the British race."